Hi everyone, our topic is the relation between allergic diseases and vasovagal syncope.
Is there a probability between allergic diseases and vasovagal syncope, as proven by analyzing fMRI bold signals when introducing an allergic reaction in children between the ages of 8 to 16 who are clinically diagnosed with vasovagal syncope and allergic disease. And allergic disease using a microdosage of 1.5 milliliters of allergens. It is predicted that a microdose of 1.5 milliliters of allergens in children who have VVS will experience lower blood oxygen levels, and as measured by the fMRI bold levels, bold signals, than those who do not have allergic diseases, and thus demonstrate a relationship between allergic diseases and VVS, which will be confirmed by statistically significant by using a 2T test. The purpose of our study is to find if there's a relation between vasovagal syncope and allergic disease. These are the factors that we will go over in our background information.
Okay, so in the U.S. alone, over 3 million people are diagnosed with VVS per year. And it's also the most common type of syncope in older children and adolescents, which is why we decided to focus our study on this age. VVS is characterized by lower blood pressure and heart rate, which ultimately leads to loss of consciousness and fainting. There's not really a universal medicine right now that doctors use. Most of the time, doctors will just tell you ways to prevent seizures, such as avoiding certain triggers like seeing blood and dehydration, or telling you to stop taking medications that lower your blood pressure. Allergic diseases affect a variety of people around the globe. Some examples are food allergies and asthma. 8% of kids have some sort of food allergy, and of that 8%, 38% experience extreme symptoms. With that in mind, food allergies can have mild symptoms to severe symptoms. Some examples of mild symptoms are itching, hives, and rashes, and some examples of severe symptoms are closing of your throat and even death. Microdosing is administering very small amounts of a drug or substance to see cellular response without inducing a physical reaction. In our study, we will use microdosing for allergens, so we will microdose very small amounts of allergens in our patient's blood, and then we will see the anatomical response without inducing an allergic reaction. We will also administer different doses based on sex, because female and male have different metabolic reactions.
So why use an fMRI to measure these levels? Essentially, it's because we want to monitor the blood oxygen levels. We expect that the blood oxygen levels will lower when the one who has vasovagal syncope and allergic disease. They will lower when they have an allergic reaction. And also, we are using an fMRI specifically because it will allow us to monitor this. And because we are working with children, it is extremely important that this is a non-invasive technique, and it does not use radiation. So what is the significance of this study? So we know that 42% of people will experience VVS in their lifetime, and of this 42%, 6% will experience this annually. If this does not convince you, let me take you to a situation. Imagine a 9-year-old girl at the park with her family. She has an allergy to peaches and she has a BS, but neither are diagnosed. She's eating the peaches and she notices 15 minutes later as she walks into the playground, her throat's a little itchy. It doesn't irritate her that much, so she goes to the playground. At the top of the playground, she feels a little dizzy. She's about to go down the slide, so she takes a step back. Next second, boom, she faints. She's on the ground. That means she fell 6 feet from the top of the playground to the bottom of the playground. She could have broken her arms, legs, or potentially hit her head. So it's very important that we notice that if allergic reactions can induce sympathy, then we need to find some ways to prevent it.
Okay, so our test population includes 200 participants delegated between 4 different groups. The 4 different groups include 2 control groups and 2 experimental groups. 2 experimental groups using experimental variables. Our participant age ranges from 8 years old to 16 years old, and they must be clinically diagnosed with EBS. Our patients must also be unmedicated to prevent as much tampering as possible with the allergens we're administering. Some of the variables included in the experiment are the use of allergens to determine blood O2 reaction. Our experimental group, which is the group we hypothesized would show changes in bold on their fMRI scans, and our control, which is the group that shouldn't show any changes in bold on their fMRI scans.
Alright, so for our procedures, the first thing that we will do is administer an allergy test to decide which allergen cause a reaction to the patient, if any. Then we will do an initial MRI upon arrival to see if there are any changes before and after for 15 minutes. Then we will administer an allergen test and wait for 15 minutes. 15 minutes because that is the time where the allergic reaction tends to take place. And then after that, we will scan a second MRI to see results after and monitor the patients for 2 hours to make sure that they're not having any prolonged reactions that happen a little bit after. And then we will schedule a follow-up appointment 1 week after to make sure that the patients aren't having any long-term effects. And then after everything is done, we will collect our data and using a 2T test, we will analyze and compare the data. So our anticipated results for this experiment are that the experimental group with both BVS and allergies should show lower blood oxygen levels after receiving the allergen, which may make the patients a little bit dizzy. The group with just allergies may have a slight change in SpO2 because they should have a minor reaction to the allergen, but however, the control group with just BVS and neither one of the two will remain the same after receiving the allergen since they will not have a reaction at all. And we can compare that to the experimental group using a 2T test to quantify the data. And then at the end, we will compare that data to the beginning.
Some of the possible limitations of this experiment include working with children. They are more difficult to work with rather than adults because it is more difficult for kids to express how they're feeling or them to follow instructions compared to if you were to ask an adult. Another possible limitation is obtaining consent from the children as well as their parents. This, although can be obtaining consent from the parents as well as children. Although the parents will be willing to give consent because this research will help identify the correlation which may help make their child healthier. The last possible limitation is for not being able to observe the children for a longer period of time. We will only be observing them for 2 hours after they are in the MRI afterwards and a week later for the post-operation checkup. Some social and legal implications include 1 in 3 kids having allergic disease. Another social, legal implication would be kids needing consent from their parent or guardian for legal consent. Also, kids are an uncommon group of participants. They are not usually the test subject. Most studies are tested upon college students. And lastly, the kids will be coming from more privileged families, specifically ones who can afford health care, because they need to be previously diagnosed of allergic disease or VBS.
For ethical implications, so as mentioned, the participants will be minors, so parental consent will be necessary. Hence, both the parents and the children will be informed about the details and possible risks with the experiment beforehand, so they can make an informed decision when giving appropriate consent. With the fMRIs, they will be filling out a questionnaire in which they will check if they fit the criteria and if they have any conditions that will prove dangerous during the scan. If the child has none of the stated conditions, they will then go on to be examined by a radiographer. As an additional step to verify if they are safe for the procedure. During this scan, if any abnormalities are discovered, the parent will be informed, although we need to keep in mind the scan is not meant to be diagnostic. Also, we chose an age group of 8 to 16, so the participant will be able to communicate any concerns with the administrator. Now, although we're using microdosing technology, there's still a level of risk due to the use of allergens, as we cannot be completely certain how the child will react. One positive ethical consideration are none